Today we're comparing Saucony's Tempus with Saucony's Endorphin Shift 3. Let's get into it. Now guys, these shoes are remarkably similar, and you might be wondering, which should I choose? The Endorphin Shift 3 has the lineage of the Endorphin Shift, the Endorphin Shift 2, as well as being siblings with the Endorphin Speed and the Endorphin Pro. They are remarkably good shoes. In fact, the Endorphin Shift is a remarkably good shoe in its own right. Saucony Tempus, nice and new, being touted as more a stability shoe, although interestingly enough, on Saucony's website, they list both the Shift 3 and the Tempus as being structured cushioning. So both of them are not stability, both of them are not neutral, structured cushioning. So perhaps if you need a little structure in your cushioning, either of these shoes will work. But let's compare them so you know which one to pick. Oh, and full disclosure, both of these shoes were sent to me for the purpose of review. However, no one is going to get a chance to see this video before you do. Now that that's out of the way, the Endorphin Shift 3 will cost you $150. The Tempus will cost you $160. And if you wanted to pick up either of these shoes, I will provide links where you can get them at Roadrunner Sports. Now keep in mind, these are affiliate links, and if you buy using any of my links, it won't cost you any more, but you will be helping support the channel. Saucony claims that the Endorphin Shift 3 in a US men's size 9 tips the scale at 9.4 ounces or 266 grams. The Tempus tips the scale at 8.9 ounces or 252 grams. So the Tempus is just a little bit lighter than the Shift 3. However, we do have to add quite a bit of weight when we get up to my size, a US men's size 13. And in my size, the Endorphin Shift tips the scale at 11.5 ounces or 326 grams. The Tempus, on the other hand, tips the scale at a comparatively feather light weight of 10.7 ounces or 302 grams. Now, honestly, in my size, neither of these shoes are super light, but the Tempus is a bit lighter. So if weight is one of your main concerns when you're buying a pair of running shoes, Tempus is going to be the one for you. Oh, and both these shoes do fit true to size. Next up, we've got the stack height. Both of these are looking pretty big. We've got pretty big stack heights. The Shift 3 has a stack height of 39 millimeters in the heel, 35 millimeters in the forefoot for a 4 millimeter drop. The Tempus has a stack height of 36.5 millimeters in the heel, 28.5 millimeters in the forefoot for an 8 millimeter drop. So again, this could be a deciding factor depending on which shoe you want. 4 millimeter drop, 8 millimeter drop. And as a side, what is your drop of choice? Let me know in the comments. Oh, and now would be a great time to whack that like button. And of course, if you're not subscribed, consider doing so. Liking this video and subscribing to the channel not only helps me and helps the channel, but it tells YouTube to send it out to other people, and perhaps they might get something out of it. Anyway, both these shoes are vegan and both are made using recycled materials. Yay for sustainability. All right guys, let's start at the top. Let's work our way down. Now I'm gonna hold these up to you and then I'm gonna show you some B-roll of the heel collar, but these heel collars are very, very similar. In fact, when you look at them, they are a very similar thickness. The material looks almost identical. Now, as far as the heel counter goes, both these shoes are very similar. The heel counter on the Tempus is extremely thick. We have a big insert in there, and that just helps provide a nice heel lockdown. On the Shift 3, we have this TPU heel clip right here. In fact, it is one of the biggest aesthetic features of the shoe, that it does serve a purpose, and it keeps that heel counter nice and rigid. Again, so when your heel is in the Shift 3, it is locked into place. Now, even though the Shift 3 does have this heel clip on the back, I had a very similar feeling of heel lockdown in the Tempus as I did in the Shift 3. So don't think that one is going to be better than the other. When we hold it up like this, we have a very similar height. The pull tab on the Tempus is red in this colorway. It's a little more protruding. The pull tab on the Shift 3 is just, it's elastic, but it's not protruding at all. So you kind of have to work to get your finger underneath the pull tab in order to pull the shoe up on your foot. Not a big deal, but it is a difference. Saucony is using very similar features on both the Shift 3 and the Tempus. We can see they're using a faux suede as an accent feature right on the back of each shoe. And as we move down to the laces, we can see that on both the Shift 3 and the Tempus, the laces are very similar. The laces on the Shift 3 are just slightly more narrow. However, that really didn't make any difference in how the shoe felt. Both shoes felt very similar when they're on foot. Now I'm saying on foot, they felt different when I was running in each of these shoes, but hold on, we'll get there. We can see that Saucony has included the same type of overlay reinforcement along the eyelet chain on both of these shoes. And on the Shift 3, we also have some overlays, just giving the upper a little more support on both sides of the shoe. The Tempus has a little more structure to the upper than the Shift 3. We do have some plastic overlays right here on the bottom, giving the heel area just a little more structure. And then we have this band that is kind of glued to the side of the shoe, and that is on both the medial and the lateral sides. And then we have a few more overlays just down towards the toe box on both the medial and lateral sides, and another little overlay to reinforce the front of the toe box of the shoe. So it seems that by looking at both these shoes, they both have a lot of overlays, giving the upper a lot of support, but the Saucony is actually quite a bit more. We can see how the upper kind of stays in place. Those overlays kind of make the volume of the shoe a little more apparent than the Shift Shift 3. On the Shift 3, the upper is kind of sinking down just a little bit, and there's nothing wrong with that. When you put your foot in, your foot feels it out. But speaking of the upper, both these shoes are using a lightweight, breathable mesh. However, the mesh is rather different on both of these shoes. The Endorphin Shift 3 has a little more apparent ventilation in the mesh upper, and the Tempus has a tighter weave, except right on the top of the toes where you can see those ventilation lines. Now, I didn't experience either of these shoes being hotter than the other, but if I had to guess, it seems pretty obvious that the Endorphin Shift 3 would be a little cooler on foot than the Tempus. I guess that all depends on what you want, you know? We're going to be coming into winter pretty soon, so perhaps the Tempus will be a slightly warmer option, but if you live in a warm place like me, perhaps the Shift 3 is going to be a little cooler on your foot. Okay, now we're coming down to the midsole, and the midsole is the main difference of these shoes. In the Endorphin Shift 3, Saucony is using a Power Run foam throughout. There is nothing else but Power Run foam on the Shift 3. Power Run is a fairly responsive foam, however, no one would ever accuse Power Run foam of being plush. I would still say it's soft, but definitely not plush. And as I have racked up the miles on the Shift 3, I have found it has broken in just a little bit. It feels a little softer than it did, but generally speaking, when I look at a shoe that has a massive stack height like the Shift 3, I look at it and I think, oh, it's gonna be a super soft ride. And the Shift 3 is not as soft as it looks. Still, for some of you that don't like a really soft ride, this could be a good option for you. And if you're looking for a little structured cushioning, as Saucony likes to call it, the Endorphin Shift 3 might be a good option for you. Having that slightly firmer foam might really benefit your stride and helping you to avoid either over or under pronating. The Tempus does have a little more sensational story when it comes to the midsole, because although the Tempus does have Power Run foam, it uses the Power Run foam in a different way. The Power Run foam is a frame, and that frame of Power Run foam just supports the foot when landing and through the transition. And if you look at my colorway of the Tempus, we can see the Power Run foam just kind of running right along here, and then you might be asking, Matt, what is this foam underneath? And what's this foam up here? That, my friends, is Power Run PB. And I'll just go ahead and say it right now, but the Power Run PB included in the Saucony Tempus is the reason that I like the Saucony Tempus more. There, I said it, I didn't even wait till the end. But the Power Run PB foam in the Saucony Tempus is also that spectacular foam that you have seen in the top of the line Endorphin Pro 3. And it is a very soft, very light, very responsive foam. So in the Saucony Tempus, we kind of have the Power Run foam adding a little support to the Power Run PB foam. Remember, when we look at the Endorphin Pro 3, we have a carbon fiber plate through the middle, which kind of supports that super soft, super light Power Run PB. In the Tempus, we get the benefits of the Power Run PB with a little added structure from the Power Run foam. And Saucony including the Power Run PB in the Tempus is the reason that it's just slightly lighter than the Endorphin Shift 3. Let's come down to the outsole just a minute. Now the Endorphin Shift 3, you can see the white on the bottom of this shoe. That is exposed midsole. And the other rubber coming down the middle, around the sides, on the lateral heel right here. This is all Saucony's XT900 rubber. It's very durable, and this shoe is going to stand up for a lot with that kind of rubber. Now, I don't know if you can see it, but I am already wearing down the exposed midsole here, and that's because the XT900 rubber is just a little lower, or perhaps it's the same level as the exposed midsole, but whatever it is already seeing some wear. Now, that isn't necessarily a bad thing, because the exposed midsole is only going to wear down so much as where the rubber kind of takes over. The outsole rubber on the Saucony Tempus is also Saucony's XT900 rubber, but there is substantially more of it. And we can see these channels coming up where the exposed midsole is, but the rubber is quite a bit higher than the exposed midsole. So we're not going to be wearing down the midsole as quickly as we do on the Shift 3. Now, as far as durability goes, when I look at where I see the most wear on my shoes, and that's on the lateral heel, when I'm heel striking, that's where I hit first, and right on the forefoot, I gotta say, the wear is pretty minimal on both of these shoes, but it looks like the Tempus has more outsole rubber than the Shift 3 does. Maybe not, maybe it's just because of the color, it looks a little more, I don't know. Either way, just looking at the bottom and seeing the wear from the amount of miles that I have put in this shoe, I'm going to say that the Tempus is probably going to last you a little bit longer. So let's wrap this up. The Saucony Tempus is $10 more than the Endorphin Shift 3. Saucony Tempus has an 8mm drop, Shift 3 has a 4mm drop. Both shoes feel remarkably similar when they're on foot. However, the Tempus is just a little softer because it has Power Run PB. The Shift feels a little more firm, so if you like a firmer ride, perhaps this is going to be the shoe for you. Look, in a nutshell, these are two very comparable shoes. And for you to choose between the two, you're going to have to decide what drop you like better, and if you like a slightly softer and more responsive ride or a slightly firmer ride. Both are excellent shoes, but if I had to choose one, I'm going with the Tempus. But you already knew that because I gave it away a few minutes ago. Alright guys, thanks for staying all the way to the end of the video. My name's Matt. This has been my comparison of Saucony's Tempus with Saucony's Endorphin Speed 3. Be kind, be happy, run well. See you in a couple of days.